Hello and welcome to this presentation, which was given at the Blockchain Gamer Live conference on the 21st of January 2020. The talk is from 2019's data to 2020's trends, all about the blockchain game sector, and all the data comes from DappRadar. So what's DappRadar? DappRadar is your most trusted source for Dapp data. So DappRadar covers all dApps currently running on 10 different blockchains. More to come in future. But DappRadar covers all dApps. So it covers games, DeFi, social, gambling, whatever dApps are running on the blockchains that we cover. We have data for, but this is just focused on the games side of the blockchain dApp sector. So, what happened in 2019? So this graph actually shows just 4 of the blockchains that we cover on DappRadar. The reason I just show 4 is because these are the 4 most important ones. Really, these are the 3 most important ones and one other. So we can see here in blue at the bottom of the graph there is Ethereum, the best known blockchain for smart contracts. Then we have Tron in red, EOS, excuse me, in yellow, and then at the top we have Ontology. So Ontology is not so well known. Ontology is a blockchain out of China. Not a lot of activity going on at the moment, but there are a couple of games on there. So I have included that. But you can see Ontology is a pretty small part of the sector. So those are the main platforms. So let's break down into a bit more detail. And we can start to see here kind of the relative values in terms of the kind of usage of games on these blockchains. What I should point out is this is all measured in daily active unique wallets. So what does that mean? So that means obviously it's a daily count. An active wallet is something that is interacting with a smart contract. A smart contract is a bit of code that runs on a blockchain, and it's a unique wallet. So if I play a game through a wallet 5 times during the day, that only counts once. So I'm only counting that wallet is only counted once. But if I play a game and I use 2 different wallets, that will be counted twice because it's 2 separate wallets. So we're not trying to work out how many users there are behind the wallets. So if I, for some reason, played a game through 10 different wallets, that would count as 10 unique wallets, even though it's only one person doing it. Obviously, that can be an issue for blockchains because we do have bots. Pretty much every blockchain has bots running on it. That will depend on the product. So games don't suffer from bots as much as, say, gambling would. But it depends a little bit on the product and how the features are set up, particularly in terms of kind of daily login rewards. If you have a lot of daily login rewards, that tends to encourage bots. The other big issue is blockchains like EOS and Tron, just because the way they're set up, they're proof of stake. Consensus model just means it's much easier to run bot farms on those. But people still do run bots on Ethereum. So what we should be thinking here is this is kind of an overestimation. Very hard to tell how much of an overestimation, but the numbers we're giving for the sector will be kind of higher than the individuals concerned. So what we can see is Ontology is pretty stable throughout the year. Doesn't really go up very much, a couple of thousand daily active unique wallets. Tron actually goes pretty high, so it goes in kind of end of Q1, kind of end of March, gets up to kind of 7,000 daily active unique wallets, but that falls away again quite quickly over the year, and it ends up at best a kind of couple of thousand. Now Ethereum, best known, starts off actually quite small, a couple of thousand daily active unique wallets, and it's quite volatile, goes up to over about 8,000, drops down a bit in September. And ends the year at about kind of 7,000 daily active unique wallets. And EOS, similar, starts the year high, 5,000 daily active unique wallets, peaks over 10,000, drops down again, kind of regains kind of a level, and kind of ends the year actually roughly about the same as Ethereum. So Ethereum, EOS starts the year as the most popular blockchain for gaming, quite considerably, and ends the year kind of neck and neck with Ethereum. Now we're going to kind of drill into the details of why these patterns are happened, and that will really generally be due to what happened to individual games. So obviously, as more games launch, as that happened in 2019, that will increase the activity across the entire blockchain. And obviously we have some games will go up and some games will go down as well. So that's really what we're seeing here in this chart, which looks quite complicated. Another way of looking at the data. So this is a graph of kind of growth, and I've normalized this at the start of the year. So basically taking the start of January as the kind of as kind of 100%, and then seeing where it goes throughout the year. So what we kind of see in broad terms is Tron, EOS, and Ontology. There is some growth there, but it's it's a matter of kind of 50%, 100%. So doubling is not nothing. Clearly, if you're doubling your audience, that's pretty good. But the big trend for the year was Ethereum. So there's often been talk in the blockchain game space of kind of Ethereum killers, and EOS and Tron definitely were kind of positioned in that in that way. And there's other blockchains coming that are positioned in that way as well. But what we definitely saw in 2019 in the game space and more generally in the Dapp space was Ethereum actually kind of reinforced its position as the #1 blockchain for running dApps on. And we can see the growth ends the year about 600% up on what it started the year as. So you often have this the debate. It's a bit of an artificial debate, I think, but it's kind of like which is the best blockchain to operate a dApp or a game on. I think it's definitely the case in 2019 that the majority of people were using Ethereum rather than EOS and Tron. Their kind of momentum fell away. Not to say that Ethereum might not be overtaken in future years, but it would seem pretty certain in 2020 that's going to still be the blockchain that most dApps are using. Partly that's because it's has the longest history. Also has the best kind of developer tool set, so the most experienced developers are happy with it. And the other thing we'll think about is with Ethereum, you're not running your entire product on the blockchain. You're just using Ethereum for, certainly in games, you're using Ethereum for really item ownership, so NFT ownership, and maybe some currency stuff. But basically, you're using it in a certain way. You're using it to have item ownership associated with the users. Whereas on EOS and Tron, you're running your entire game on the blockchain. So there's slightly different use cases going on. Okay. So let's spend most of our time looking at Ethereum. So this is just breaking off the Ethereum kind of year. So we start off the year about 1,500 daily active unique wallets. It gets to kind of early summer, and there's this big spike. So over 8,000 daily active unique wallets, but only for just over a week or so. Falls away again to about 5,000. Then in September we have quite a big drop to on one day at least about 2,500 daily active unique wallets. Start of October, the growth is back in, and we end the year at about kind of 7,000 daily active unique wallets. So what's going on here? Well, we can definitely look at the drop in September, and we understand why that happened. So on Ethereum, because it's currently a proof of work blockchain, that will change in future, but currently proof of work blockchain. So the way it's set up is any transaction to get stored into the Ethereum blockchain, you have to pay a gas fee. So a gas fee is just a small amount of money, a cryptocurrency, that you basically spend. And that's really to do with, there's only a certain amount of data that can be stored in a block, and only a certain amount of blocks closed every few minutes. So how the gas price is basically a way of saying how important is this data to be stored in the blockchain. So you can choose how much gas you're happy to spend. And what happened actually, it was pretty much the start of September. There was a high risk gambling DApp that really a Ponzi scheme. So people who paid in early kind of got their money out, and it kind of attracted attention. And what happened was it got so popular that everyone really wanted to play this game, or a lot of people wanted to play this game, and were prepared to spend a lot of relative gas price to get their transactions saved. So you see a big spike, 150, 200% increase in the price of gas. So that was fine for the people who were playing this Ponzi scheme, but for everyone else, they didn't actually want to pay any more gas to get their transactions through. Particularly happens on the game side. If you're doing DeFi and you want to move $1,000 into Compound or something, then if you're going to pay $2 on that, probably not such a big issue. If you want to breed a crypto kitty and it's going to cost you $2 to breed it, then you're probably going to go, I'll do it tomorrow. So what you see, this graph here in red, you're seeing the combined audience for the three most popular blockchain games on Ethereum. and as the gas price goes up to over 200% increase, then the audience of those games drops 50%. The good news, I guess, for the Ethereum ecosystem was, as the gas price went down to a normal level, an average level, then the audience kind of came back to start playing these games again. So it wasn't like the audience was lost. So September to October, we see a big drop in usage for games, and then it kind of recovers. So that's we'll see that in individual game graphs as well. So this is looks really a mess of color. So this is breaking out the Ethereum games individually. And we can start to see why the Ethereum graph is as it is. So we see basically two main games there. So there's the Hypersnakes, which is in green, and that's creating this very large peak of over 4,000. I'm sorry, Hypersnakes itself has over 4,000 daily active unique wallets when it launches in early summer. And then the main game, the main driver of growth, is My Crypto Heroes in blue. Loads of other games, we'll talk about them briefly, that launched on Ethereum or operated on Ethereum through 2019. Some really nice games, some really interesting stuff there, but none of them got over 1,000 daily active unique wallets, or at least sustained that. So let's go into more detail. My Crypto Heroes. So My Crypto Heroes is a game out of Japan, mainly played by actually Japanese people. Is quite Japanese in tone. It's like an RPG, very grindy, a bit difficult, I guess, for some Western players who haven't played that sort of thing. Even for me, who've played a lot of that sort of thing, it is quite difficult to get to grips with. But we can see here, a kind of a fairly strong kind of growth curve throughout the year. A big jump from under 1,000 to over 1,000 daily active unique wallets in March, which we'll look into. We see in September this dropping away, so it goes well under 2,000 daily active unique wallets when the gas price goes up. And then when the gas price goes back to normal, then the kind of growth continues. Ends the year about 3,500 daily active unique wallets. So My Crypto Heroes is generally the most popular blockchain game. But what does that actually mean? What are we actually tracking here? So this is quite important. So for DappRadar, what we're looking at is the smart contracts that are associated with this game. And they all do specific things. And actually what's interesting, in the case of My Crypto Heroes, it's actually a free-to-play game, so you don't need to spend any money to play it. And actually, you don't even need to have a wallet, an Ethereum wallet, and you certainly don't need to interact with the blockchain to play the game. So we see this in the next slide. This is the login, the login detail, the way you would log into My Crypto Heroes. So we can see sign in. You can sign in with an Ethereum wallet, something like MetaMask or Dapper, or you can use this. In this case, it's the mobile version, so mobile browser. It's a browser game, so that you can use the Google Trial Play version. So I could just sign in and play the game effectively as a guest, not having Ethereum, not having a wallet, not interacting with the blockchain. And around 2/3 of the people who actually play My Crypto Heroes actually don't use the blockchain side of it at all. They just play it as a normal game. We don't measure them, obviously, because we're measuring the activity through the smart contract, which is obviously the blockchain side of it. Interestingly, you could sign in with a wallet, but unless you were spending cryptocurrency or doing something else, we wouldn't measure you either. So probably about 10,000, over 10,000 people probably play My Crypto Heroes. That's anecdotal from the developer. Obviously, at DappRadar, we're not interested in anecdotal things. We're interested in what we can measure. So we only measure the blockchain activity. What's that blockchain activity? So why did My Crypto Heroes have this big jump in March 2019? Well, they introduced what they call the Prime subscription. So the Prime subscription is a monthly subscription. You can see here, you can either pay with 1,000 GUM, so GUM is their non-blockchain in-game currency, or you can pay with Ether, so 0.1 ETH, so that's roughly kind of $15 to $20, depending on the price of ETH. And then once you have that subscription, you get a whole bunch of benefits. The main one is you get double XP, and every day you can log in and you can claim a bonus. So you get 35 GUM every day you log in. So actually, what we're seeing when we look at this graph of dots, what we're measuring here is people logging in every day to get their rewards. So this is actually quite a good measure of people playing My Crypto Heroes, because this is the kind of the committed people who are paying $15 to $20 a month and then logging in every day. And the volatility is obviously some days if the gas fee is high, they don't log in, or they don't claim those rewards, because that's a blockchain interaction. But actually, with My Crypto Heroes, because of the way Ethereum works and because of the way the game is constructed, this is actually quite a good measure of the kind of underlying growth of this game. Okay, so let's look at something completely different. So Hypersnakes. So Hypersnakes has, as we said, had this massive launch, over 4,000 daily active unique wallets, and then falls away to well under 1,000. So what's going on here? So Hypersnakes comes out of, from a Chinese developer called Mixmarvel. And although a broad characteristic, the Chinese blockchain crypto audience is a little bit different to what we see in the rest of the world, certainly in the West. And they're much more driven by kind of speculative kind of investment type approaches. So with Hypersnakes, it's a game. It's like a Flash game, a Gare.io. So you basically are a snake, and you're moving around eating things and getting bigger, and then you try to eat everyone else's snake, and eventually you get eaten. So it's kind of a competitive game, and you get rewards depending on how successful you are. There's also you can actually own kind of arenas, and other people play in them, and you get a tax for whenever they play, the currency they spend to get into the game. You get a bit of that. So it's quite a complicated model, which is not really the same as My Crypto Heroes. So we're measuring different things here, and actually it was very successful. It had this very successful kind of promotional launch campaign, and lots of discounted kind of items and things like that. So you had a very interested kind of community to begin with for the first 2 weeks or so. Lots of activity around that. When that died away, then we can see the kind of audience died away as well. So nothing's kind of right or wrong, I don't think, in the blockchain game space. People are looking for audiences in different ways, but this is this kind of characteristic of a very sharp, successful launch and then not sustained, because a lot of these people, clearly about 3,000 of these daily active unique wallets were there for just kind of short-term rewards, and potentially when you have this kind of big discounted launch period, you attract people who have a lot of bots. So that's probably the characteristic going on here. Let's look at some other, obviously much smaller blockchain games running on Ethereum. What happened to them over 2019? This is a pretty interesting one. 0x Universe. So 0x Games is a Russian developer. Probably not as well known as they should be. Got quite a few games across different blockchains. This is their longest running game and their kind of most successful game. So compared to the other two games we've seen, which had fairly strong patterns, daily patterns of kind of usage, this looks a bit like a dog's dinner. I mean, there's like dots everywhere. There's kind of an upward trend on it, so there's kind of growth, but it's a little bit all over the place. So why is that? Well, 0x Universe is actually quite a decentralized game in terms of anything you do in the game, you are interacting with the blockchain. It also has the smart contracts are quite complex and expensive to run. So we can particularly see this in September. The usage model goes pretty much to zero because it was costing a couple of dollars to do anything in the game. So basically everyone stopped playing. Interestingly, when the gas price goes back to normal, we have this massive spike, and we have almost well over 1,000 daily active unique wallets, kind of the day up, the time after the gas price goes back. So you can kind of see how actually something like gas price more generally will affect 0x Universe. The other thing with 0x Universe is it doesn't really have any good daily retention, so there's no reason to come back every day and play. So it's much more you have this much more volatile kind of pattern in terms of people coming in and playing. And this is what 0x Universe looks like. So you buy planets and you gain resources and you make rockets, that sort of thing. Okay, our favourite, CryptoKitties. So CryptoKitties is now over 2 years old, so it's the longest running blockchain game, game collectible, really, the game in the loosest sense. What do we see for 2019 for CryptoKitties? So compared to 0x Universe, actually quite an obvious trend. So it actually increases in the first kind of quarter of 2019 up to about 400 daily active unique wallets, and then kind of falls away quite steadily and ends up about 150 daily active unique wallets. So it's a game kind of in decline, in managed decline. Very, very good live ops team. And only a certain amount they can do with CryptoKitties because it's such a simple game. So all you're doing in this game is breeding kitties, and depending on the characteristics they have, you can breed different kind of fancy cats, and there's these kind of time limited art styles that you can get. So it's quite difficult. There's not many levers for them to pull. So they're doing a fairly good job, I think, for a game that's 2 years old. But it's into this managed decline phase now. Gods Unchained. So this is a game that created lots of headlines in 2019. And what we're looking at here, or what we can see the pattern, is a fairly strong pattern. And we need to dig into a little bit of kind of what we're measuring here to understand. why the pattern is as it is. So Gods Unchained is a card-based game, a bit like Hearthstone. But at the moment, it's a centralized game. So when you play the game, it's in open beta at the moment. You're not interacting with the blockchain. So you're just playing the game like Hearthstone. So what we're measuring here is actually not people playing the game. We're measuring people buying the card. So Gods Unchained launched actually in the kind of October 2018 with what it called its Genesis set of cards. It was a limited number. There's about over 6 million of these cards, and they were going to be once they were bought, that was it. And they were going to, when people were buying the cards, that money was going into a prize pot for their first esports tournament, which is yet to happen. So what we see is kind of the kind of a speculative interest in buying these cards, and we see obviously at the start there was kind of a lot of activity, over 250 daily active unique wallets. It drops away certainly towards the summer of 2019, drops away to some days well under 100. But then as the set of these cards comes to an end, there's only going to be a certain number. We see kind of interest rising again, and excitement and kind of speculative interest kind of coming up, and we see this kind of big rise, so we're almost up to 750 daily active unique wallets towards the end of September. What's interesting then is the cards sell out, so there's no more cards, so the activity goes to zero, and then what we're measuring after that is you can't buy the cards anymore. So at a certain period of time, they mint all the cards onto the Ethereum blockchain, and then you can trade them in the marketplace. So we're seeing this massive big spike up to 1,000 daily active unique wallets when that first happens, falls away again. And then what we're measuring in the end of 2019, early 2020 is just the daily activity of people trading cards. So that's kind of interesting. We can this is what the cards look like when you get them. We can look at a few different things here. So instead of looking at users, we're looking at the daily volume of ETH, so the cryptocurrency that was used to buy them. So we have big spikes at the start of the buying period. So over 500, a couple of days of over 500 ETH a day being spent. Generally falls away again, occasional kind of spikes, and then there's the big spike over 3 days of over 750 ETH being spent is when the cards are selling out, and everyone's like, oh, they've got to get them now, or kind of FOMO, the typical FOMO sort of thing. And then the trading is actually much lower once the cards are sold out. So whether Gods Unchained's cards as an investment kind of asset will fulfill their potential, we'll have to wait and see. I guess it depends until the game really kicks off. And we can see this in a different way. This is the cumulative ETH total. So we can see where the line is more vertical, that's when the kind of the heavy spending's going, and we can see obviously that's the start and the end of the process. And finally, because I like dots and I like colors, this is kind of visualizing when the spending happens. So on the horizontal axis we have the daily spending. This is in dollars, and vertically we have the daily active unique wallets. And the colors, the two you want to care about is blue. So blue is what happened in 2018. So we can see here, not a lot of users, so 200 or so, under 300 daily active unique wallets, but some quite big days of spending. So $300,000 a day being spent. And then in green, we have Q4 2019. So that's the end of the process. We can see that there's a lot more wallets involved then. So the popularity has gone up quite considerably, double, triple. Not spending quite so much as the peak days of 2018, but still spending $100,000 a day or more. So that's Gods Unchained. Okay, so that's Ethereum. We've kind of covered Ethereum. That's the majority of what's happened in the blockchain game space. Let's have a look at EOS. So EOS, as we've mentioned, kind of starts the year at 5,000, goes up to about 10,000, drops down to 5,000, goes up to about 9,000, and then towards the end of the year we get quite a lot of volatility. So as with the gas price on Ethereum, for EOS towards the end of the year, from November onwards, there was a lot of network congestion. So I won't go into too much detail about this, but for a proof of stake wallet, you have to stake EOS, and that gives you a certain amount of access to the network. The more EOS you stake in your wallet, the more access to the network you have. So it's similar to gas in a way. And what happened was from about October onwards, November onwards actually, there was this an airdrop went on with a certain token, and if you could basically fire some EOS to this smart contract, and it sent you back this other token and your EOS back. So it became a way of making money, but it was effectively a money printing machine, although it effectively became a spamming machine, really. And again, you had to increase if you want to get your transaction through, if you're playing a game on EOS, you had to start staking more EOS. Most people obviously couldn't be bothered. So we started to see this kind of quite, there was a strong downturn, and then it kind of rebounded as people started working out ways of getting around it. But a lot more volatility towards the end of the year for EOS games. If we look at individual products, actually the main driver of the EOS kind of trend for EOS during the year was in yellow EOS Knights there. Two other games, EOS Dynasty and Prospectors, did also kind of towards the end of the year. They launched in the year and did quite successfully launch and sustain their user base. EOS Knights was kind of a basket case. So let's go and have a look at why that was the case. So EOS Knights actually been going for quite a long time. It's a mobile game, an idle game, and in March it was pretty successful. Was doing about 7,000 daily active unique wallets, and then we started to see a steady decline throughout the year, really, and ended the year at well under 1,000 daily active unique wallets. So it's not entirely clear why this happened. One obvious thing is the game is an idle game, and it's very hard to build kind of long-term meta game into that game. So generally, you would have people churning out of that game over time, because if you played it for a few months, certainly if you played it for a year or so, it just gets a bit boring. It's not too much to do. So that'd be part of it. Definitely the big drop towards the end of the year from about 2,000 to under 1,000 daily active unique wallets was to do with this congestion. I mean, I played this game and you just couldn't play it. You couldn't, unless you had a lot of EOS staked. You probably something. I probably had about kind of $25-30 of EOS staked. I couldn't play the game. It was unplayable. So that's another part of it. I think in general as well, anything on EOS, you're never quite sure how many bots are operating. If people start switching off bots because the reward system isn't as lucrative, then that, I think all three of those things had an impact. The other thing to note is the developer of EOS Knights, Biscuit Labs, also launched at the end of the year launched a game called Night Story, which is effectively EOS Knights version 2, and they launched that on Ethereum. So a lot of their time was kind of taken away from EOS Knights and moved on this new game, which actually launched fairly successfully on Ethereum. So I think they just kind of thought EOS Knights, we're going to leave that now. We can't do anything with it. We're focusing on a new product. So I think all that kind of combined to create this kind of quite striking decline. So the two other games on EOS that have more successful stories of 2019. EOS Dynasty. So EOS Dynasty is kind of interesting. It's a Chinese game, and it's pretty much a copy of EOS Knights, but using kind of Chinese Third Kingdom sort of themes. So launches fairly successfully, hits 2,000 daily active unique wallets, drops down a bit, and then towards the end of the year has this strong kind of build. The congestion on EOS creates this much more volatile kind of situation towards the end. Again, it's quite a difficult game to play. It's a mobile game, but it's not going through traditional app stores. It's kind of going through you can download the APKs, and it's quite difficult as everything with EOS to kind of set up wallets and things. So I'm a little bit unsure about quite where all these users are coming from. A bit more research needs to be done, I think, to see exactly why this game has been successful. But potentially you have people who were playing EOS Knights kind of switching over, I suppose. The other game that's been successful on EOS is Prospectors. So Prospectors is kind of interesting. So the yellow is the daily active unique wallets on EOS, and then I've added in this pink line, these pink lines, and that's the Wax blockchain. So Wax blockchain is an EOS compatible blockchain, so it's very easy for EOS dApps to port themselves over to Wax, which is what happened for Prospectors. The Wax blockchain didn't launch very late in the year, so it launched in kind of mid-December. So there's not a lot of data on it, so I haven't included it kind of generally, but Prospectors was the launch game for Wax, and we can see here there's a big spike, very, 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 very big spike when Wax launched. It kind of dropped away again, and actually now kind of the EOS version of Prospectors is slightly bigger than the Wax version, but they're broadly the same, about 2,000 daily active unique wallets, combined. We have 4,000. Now, the issue here is we're not really sure if people are playing on EOS and Wax. The other thing with Prospectors is it has its own currency, so there would be reasons for lots of people with bots to play Prospectors, because potentially you can kind of earn this currency in the game and then sell it. So again, as with these kind of blockchain consensus models, we'd have to do a bit more research to work out exactly how many bots are happening here. But I think we could say, yeah, Perspectives is quite an interesting game. It's kind of economic kind of model, and it has quite deep gameplay and metagame to it. So this is not all bots. There are people playing it, but again, very different to games running on Ethereum, because on EOS basically everything's running on the blockchain. So different sort of model. Tron, not really going to talk about Tron specifically, partly because nothing happened. The main thing with Tron is the majority of dApps running on Tron are gambling dApps, and even in the game category on Tron, they tend to be quite gambling influenced. So they're not traditional games, and this is why you have this big kind of big spike in the early year. You get these kind of gaming gambling dApps kind of coming in and falling away quite quickly. It tends to happen with gambling dApps, quite hard for them to sustain an audience. So Tron kind of ends the year at about 1,500 daily active unique wallets. No standout games there, but there is one that's worth discussing, which is a cross chain game, Blockchain Cuties. So Blockchain Cuties launched on Ethereum. So we have this we're showing the Ethereum audience in blue. The majority of people play Blockchain Cuties on Ethereum. Then we have Tron, and actually throughout the year, Blockchain Cuties is the one game on Tron that has been successful and still fairly small. Hundreds of daily active unique wallets, not thousands, but it's grown. It's grown its audience on Tron. The game is also available on EOS, but no one plays it on EOS, and also available on Ontology. Not many people play it on Ontology. So two things to note about Blockchain Cuties in 2019 is we see very strongly in September the drop of the ETH audience with the gas fee. That goes down very, very low, then kind of recovers. And the other interesting thing is in December, they launched a new feature in the game called the Forge. And for the Forge, that meant you could take items that you had in the game that you weren't really using. You could reduce them down to a currency or a resource called magic dust, and you could use that to level up other things in the game. So a very traditional kind of RPG feature, and we kind of see that really drove audience. So if you take all four blockchains, Blockchain Cuties ends the year, some days peaking over 1,000 daily active unique wallets. So it's not the biggest blockchain game out there, but it's kind of proof that if you spend the time building out kind of features that the audience wants, you can kind of find growth, and you are kind of in control of that growth. Okay, so a lot of data there. Trends. What trends do we see for 2020? So it's a long-term trend, and we have this is kind of a broad way that I think about games, blockchain games. So we have blockchain games, and we have games using blockchain. It may seem like not a very large difference, but it is quite fundamental. So a blockchain game would be a game where pretty much anything, the game logic and the metagame and any ownership and any trading, all happens on the blockchain. So that's particularly the case for games using EOS or Tron, because they are fast enough to do that. And there are other blockchains coming that will promise that. And in a sense, they're the purest expression of blockchain gaming, where everything is decentralized. Very, very hard to do that, though, and it creates lots of issues in terms of onboarding people and just being in control of a nice experience. So what we're generally seeing is games using the blockchain, and certainly with the exception of CryptoKitties, all the games on Ethereum are games using the blockchain. So the game logic in most cases for Ethereum is running on a centralized server, and what's happened on the blockchain is ownership elements or kind of payment methods and things like that. So a classic example is My Crypto Heroes, which you can play the game without using the blockchain elements at all. And those games have tended to be the ones that have seen growth because it's much easier to onboard people. So this is a broad kind of definition, and personally, I think the big trend is just because the kind of more the pure blockchain games sector hasn't really taken off. None of those games have grown any significant audiences. The growth we have seen is more games using the blockchain. So I think that's kind of where we're going. I could be proven wrong, obviously, on that. It depends a little bit on the infrastructure. But that generally seems to me, if I look at the games that are coming in 2020, they are more interested in making a nice user experience rather than being very, very decentralized. Okay, so this is a game we've not spoken about at all. It's a very small game called Axie Infinity. It is probably the most interesting game if you want to play a blockchain game to go and investigate. Very good, friendly, strong community. And what they did, it's a game that runs on Ethereum, I should say, in terms of the item ownership. And what they added in end of 2019 was these potions. So Axie Infinity is a breeding game. So you breed. This screen is showing you're going to breed these two Axies together. It's also a fighting game. So you breed Axies together to kind of make cool Axies. Then you battle them, and when you battle, you win these potions, and you need the potions to breed. So that's kind of the basic mechanic that they added into the game. And what's interesting is these potions are called small love potions. And you need them, you win them in the game, and then you need them to breed. But actually, they are an ERC20 token, so that's just they are effectively a cryptocurrency. So what we've seen is they've become a way of what Axie Infinity took, say, as play to earn. So I don't like that term very much. I think it's a bit dangerous. But what's interesting is you can now play the game Axie Infinity. You can battle. You can win these tokens. Then you can go to an exchange. So Uniswap is a decentralized kind of exchange, and then you can sell your small love potions that obviously other Axie Infinity players want to buy to breed, and then you can get ETH for that. So you have this kind of mechanic now where people can do something in the game, get a resource, and then effectively cash that out for real cash. You can take your ETH and then you can take it out through an exchange. So that's pretty interesting. And we are seeing more games come up with the ERC20 tokens. Blockchain Cuties has its own token, QT, and other games are coming up with it. I think there are lots of issues if you just have a pure payment token. The Axie Infinity one is interesting because it's very specific, has a very specific gameplay mechanic associated with it. I think if you just have general ERC20 tokens, haven't really worked for games so far, haven't really worked for many things actually. So I think you have to be careful with this thing, but I think we will see more blockchain games thinking more about these kind of options. And further down the line, again, Axie Infinity is a very good example of this, is how you can link gameplay or time spent in game with kind of the decentralized finance explosion that's happening. And Uniswap is definitely part of that, so that's why I mentioned that. What else? So again, this is Axie Infinity, and this is something they again launched in 2019. Lots of other games did as well, and this is land. So land is effectively permanent ownership of something within the game. So Axie Infinity has land. My Crypto Heroes has land. Blockchain Cuties is coming out with land. Basically, everyone's coming out with land, which is a stronger ownership model. You're not owning characters or items; you're owning a place in the game, and that obviously then creates lots of interesting potential for kind of deep, long-term gameplay mechanics that you can base around kind of this ownership model. So, blockchain games at the moment are fairly they're complex in some ways, but in gameplay features are not actually quite simple. So we're going to see these get progressively more complex as the year goes on, and certainly if they can be combined in a blockchain way, in terms of this land is sold and can be traded, and that kind of really plays out the strengths of blockchain. What else? So the final thing is always new games. And there are some pretty high-profile games coming out in 2020. Some of these actually kind of playable now in certain kind of beta forms. There's a lot more games than this, but these are some of the more high-profile ones. So we have the Sandbox, which is a kind of version of Minecraft on the blockchain. So you'll own land in these little kind of sandbox land environments in the game. You can buy items to put in them. You can make little mini games in there. You can invite people to come in and play. That's pretty interesting. F1 Delta Time is gained a lot of press in 2019, selling F1 cars. It's an official F1 licensed game, so it has the official F1 teams and all that sort of stuff, and it's kind of following the F1 season. So that launches in March. Crypto Space Commander been around in various stages of development for a long time now, getting on for 2 years. Currently available through Steam as a early access game. So that's a very complex space trading combat game. Neon District, a kind of a RPG, very noir, very has a lot of kind of cyberpunk ethos around it, and has built up quite a strong community. And then I guess the biggest one, at least for me, is Blankos. Blankos Blancos Block Party, I should say. So that's a game coming out from some people who worked at Activision Blizzard. Kind of going to be a kind of a user generated content game. Lots of things about branding. Lots of these very kind of cool vinyl style characters. So all these games appeal in different ways. All of them use the blockchain in different ways. But I think the biggest issue we've had in 2019 is we've not really appealed to gamers. We've appealed to kind of geeky blockchain people like me, and maybe like you, but we've not really appealed to kind of mass market gamers just to say, here's a really cool game, and also it has this other kind of stuff attached to it. We've been basically saying, we've got a blockchain game, come and play a blockchain game. And the blockchain stuff's been complex and the game's not been very good. So I think that will change in 2020. So there we go. That is my views on what happened in 2019, what will potentially happen in 2020. You can find me here. There's my email, there's my Twitter. If you have any comments, obviously you can put them in the comments box on YouTube as well. And thanks for watching the video. If you made it right to the end, well done. Don't forget to subscribe. Obviously, this channel is all about blockchain gaming, so spend a lot of time playing them and thinking about them. So if you're interested in that, please do subscribe. But thanks for watching the video, and hope to see you again soon.